That's 1 o'clock. So hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Canny Commuting, the webinar series that makes it easier for people to walk, cycle, and get public transport to work and for work. Canny Commuting is brought to you by My Journey Hampshire in association with Sustrans and is funded by Highways England. My name is Andy and I am your Canny Commuter in Chief. So welcome to my kitchen where I'll be presenting from today. Those of you who've been following us for a while will notice that in the background to today, there is no bicycle. And that is because for the first time in a long time, today is going to have nothing to do with riding bikes. Today, we are going to be talking about something much bigger than bikes. But before we do that, I have been canny commuting in the Solent area for about the last 15 years. I've worked in Winchester, I've worked in Portsmouth, and I've worked in Southampton. I've done a lot of work in Eastleigh as well. So I have quite a lot of experience of getting around the area on foot, by bike, and on the train. What I have very, very little experience of is getting around the area by bus. So today, and I am so sorry about this, we are going to be doing some myth busting. There will be bus puns for the next half an hour. I am so sorry about this. And we will be myth busting, and we will be taking the bus out of bustle with two people who know so much more about buses than I do. And can I start with Abbie? Would you like to introduce yourself to the gathered throng for me?
Yes, of course. I'm Abbie. I'm a Senior Communications Officer at Southampton City Council, and I'm a full-time bus user. So I'm going to be talking a bit today about my experience of using the bus locally in and around Southampton and what I most enjoy about that.
Fabulous. And joining myself and Abbie today is Claire. Claire, can you introduce yourself for us?
Yes, sure. I'm Claire. I'm also a Senior Communications Officer with Southampton City Council in the My Journey team. One of the things I do is to make sure that anything we need to say about bus travel is sent out in our communications. So I have a little bit of knowledge of the area. I also am an occasional bus user myself. And I'm going to be talking about planning your journey.
Fabulous. Thank you. We are recording today. So if you don't wish to appear on the screen, you shouldn't do, but if for some reason that doesn't work, please turn your cameras off and please keep yourselves on mute. Abbie and Claire are going to talk for about 15 minutes and then we'll take questions. So if you have any questions, please add them to the chat and we'll take those at the end. And it really helps me to identify who is coming to these webinars. If you can put which workplace you work at in the chat as well, because that means that we can talk to our funders about where we are reaching out to, and that really, really helps. Now, I've done quite a lot of rambling and quite a lot of rabbiting, so I'm going to be quiet now, and I'm going to hand over to Abbie and Claire, who are going to tell you all about how amazing buses are. Take it away.
Thanks, Andy. So I'm going to go first. As I said, I'm a full-time bus user. I don't drive, I can't drive. So the bus is my primary mode of transport. It's how I get around. I'll admit that I have had some surprise reactions from people about this in the past. I do get a lot of people ask me, when are you going to learn? You are going to learn though, aren't you? And I think especially because I do have two young children, there's almost this kind of expectation that I would naturally have access to a car. But the truth is I did have driving lessons when I was 17. But I really struggle with anxiety. And for me, the whole experience of driving was particularly triggering for that. I found it made me feel on edge. I would get filled with dread actually before every single lesson. And I just kind of decided it's not worth the stress. So I determined that by hook or by crook, I was going to get wherever I needed to in life by bus. And that's pretty much what I've been doing ever since. And on the whole, I've done okay. There are admittedly times when I can't get to where I need to by bus, but on the majority of the time I can, I do just fine. And I think that's one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about today is that when you start looking into sort of the options you have available for bus travel, a lot of people I think would be quite pleasantly surprised by how far and wide you can travel, the kinds of journeys you can make. Just an example from a few summers ago. I know this isn't a commuter journey, but it's just a good example. So I took my children from where we live in Sholing to Marwell Zoo, and I remember a friend of mine being very surprised that that is a journey you can make by bus. Also, a few years ago, I was working up at Highfield campus, My daughter was a lot younger at the time. She was around 18 months old. She was in a pram. And 4 out of 5 mornings a week, we got up, we got the 2 buses we needed to get from where we lived in Sholing to Highfield. So that was a City Red bus to the city centre, and then a Unilink bus from there up to Highfield. So I used the Solent Go travel card, which allowed me to top up 1 card. I could then use that across both operators. So it was really easy, quite straightforward. Now, the journey itself, you know, it sounds quite challenging, doesn't it? Getting up early in the morning with a disgruntled toddler, dragging her from one side of the city to the other on 2 bus journeys. And yeah, it was challenging. I probably had to get up a lot earlier and travel for a lot longer than if I've been driving. But I think it just kind of goes to show that with the planning and the organisation, you know, it is possible to make these journeys. So that's really the other key point, I think, is the being prepared, the getting yourself organised. So, you know your routes, know your timetables, use Google Maps. It's excellent. It's a free tool. It tells you, you know, what you need to do to get from A to B by bus. Know what time you need to be at the bus stop, allow enough time to get there so you're not kind of already stressed and running around before you've even got on the bus. Pack your bag the day before. I know this is kind of all obvious basic stuff, but it does all help. So, you know, get everything ready so you're not, it's one less thing to think about the next day. If you're traveling with children, make sure you've got everything you need to keep them entertained on the journey. I know certainly when I was making those journeys up to Highfield, I got through a lot of snacks with my daughter. And yeah, if you're making any connections, obviously think about where you need to be, when you need to be, so you don't miss those. You know, if you're getting another bus or you're connecting to a train service. But yeah, I think like most things in life, it's all about the planning. And if you're organised and you do plan ahead, the bus can actually be a really enjoyable and stress-free way to get around. You know, you're giving somebody else the worry of the driving. You don't have to think about it. For me, the things that I really enjoy about bus travel, first of all, it allows me to combine my journey to work with walking. So I really like walking. At the moment, working at Southampton City Council, so in the mornings I walk with my son. I drop him off to his childminder's house first of all. I then walk with my daughter from there to her school. I drop her off, and then finally I walk from there to the bus stop, where I obviously get the bus into work. And at this point I've probably been walking for about an hour, which might sound like quite a lot, but to me, I don't get an awful lot of exercise into my schedule. So this is really kind of the main source of my exercise. And actually, it's really important for me that I have the opportunity to top and tail my day with that walking to and from the bus stop. And that's something I've really missed throughout the pandemic as well, working from home, not having that kind of walking in my day as well. So yeah, really great that it allows you to get your daily steps in. And, you know, you wouldn't be doing that if you were getting in the car, would you? Let's face it. So yeah, so the other thing I really like about it is it gives me time. So it's time in the morning and the afternoon that is just solely for me, really. You know, I'm not thinking about work, I'm not thinking about home, at least I'm definitely trying not to think about those things. I will usually plug myself into my music. Sometimes I'll read a book. If I've got a book on the go, I might catch up with some emails, or sometimes I'll just look out the window and I'll watch the world go by. But it is time for me where I can just literally chill out and unwind. And I actually find something quite mindful about that, especially at the end of the day when I'm starting to think about going home. By this point, I'm actually really looking forward to getting on the bus and just having that opportunity to just relax. So I really like that. I think traveling by bus can be a really sociable thing as well. So it might sound quite funny, but I've got a few friends that I know pretty well now who I met through purely traveling on the bus, because obviously, you know, when you're doing these same journeys day in, day out, you start to see the same people, you get chatting. And I think there's something really lovely about that, you know, that it's kind of a far cry from sitting in your metal box, detached from the world outside you. You're actually connecting with people around you. And I think that's really nice. There's also the sort of social consciousness thing. So, you know, one bus takes, 70 cars off the road. So you can travel by bus and kind of feel good about yourself. You feel that you're making a small but important contribution to your local area. Buses have much cleaner engines now than they ever have done before. So you're helping the local air quality. So you can kind of give yourself a bit of a pat on the back while you're doing it as well. But the number one thing that I really, really love about traveling by bus is the tap and cap, or the tap on and tap off options, depending on which bus operator you travel with. And Claire is going to go into this in more detail when I've finished. But I travel a bit with both bus operators. I tend to travel with First Bus just because of where I am, the services I have locally. On First Bus, it is tap and cap. So the cap just means that the cost of my journey is capped at a maximum amount per day. And again, Claire will go into that in more detail in a minute. But the tap bit I really love, because it means that I get on, I just flash my payment card, I tap the contactless card reader, and it's done. I don't even need to think about, you know, what ticket am I asking for, what destination am I going to. And I think if you're like me, if you struggle with anxiety, or if you're just someone who hasn't been on the bus for a long time, this is the kind of thing you can get quite het up about. What do I say when I get on? What am I doing when I get on? What do I need to tell the driver? And it just completely takes all the stress and the thought out of that whole experience. And I think this is the thing, you know, traveling by bus has been made so much easier now, and even with things like onboard announcements as well. So gone are the days of kind of traveling in the dark winter nights. Is my stop coming up? Is this me? Is this where I get off? You know, the bus tells you when you need to get off, so it couldn't be easier. And I think it's interesting as well, you know, you talk about driving. A lot of people used to say to me when I was 17 learning to drive, oh, driving's your freedom, you know, your world's your oyster when you drive. You can go wherever, you can do whatever you want. But being a non-driver, I've never let it stand in my way. You know, it's never posed too many kind of significant barriers for me. So I think it is in the planning. And if you have got the opportunity to give it a go, I know not everyone has, but if you have got the opportunity to give it a go, and it's been a long time since you have tried the bus, give it a go, because I think you'll find it's changed a lot, and I think you might be quite pleasantly surprised. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Claire.
So I am an occasional bus commuter. I'm lucky, I'm pretty much spoiled for choice for buses. I live in Shirley and I commute into the centre of Southampton. I usually go by bicycle. I usually cycle, but the bus is my second choice. I do drive, I do have a car. I wouldn't drive into town for various reasons. It's too stressful, and the cost of parking, etc., etc. But what I want to talk about is planning your journey by bus, specifically in Southampton, because I live in Southampton, but also I will refer to Hampshire and Portsmouth as well. So the first thing to do is you need to think about which bus route to get. Now, we do have 3 bus operators in Southampton. So we've got Blue Star, we've got City Red, which is the local brand name for the First Bus group, and we've got Bus. So I don't know a huge amount about Bus. They're usually the ones which begin with X, and they have some useful little routes. Mostly I travel with Blue Star or City Red. I'm very, very bus agnostic. I will take the first bus that comes along. And so what I want to do is I'll just share my screen, because I will show you a good place to start. If you do this, so hopefully you can see that. This is the My Journey website. It says My Journey Southampton. So we've got a journey planner on My Journey. And I've pre-populated this with Southampton Airport and Southampton General Hospital. This is a question actually we got by email the other day. You know, is there direct bus from Southampton Airport to Southampton General Hospital? It's a really good question. It's related to somebody who actually works at the hospital and lives in Winchester, so it's going to be travelling to Southampton by train. And we want to travel from the train station, which is actually at the airport, as we know. So on My Journey, you can just click, and it does click through to Google Maps. So as Abbie said, Google Maps is a really, really great place to start. You can choose how you want to travel, and it will tell you, it'll give you an option for time. You can actually adjust the time on Google Maps. You're either leaving now, or you can tell when you want to depart or when you want to arrive by. And it'll give you various options. So I can see here immediately there's an option, it's 2 different buses. And if I click on that, it will actually show me a little bit more information about each of those bus journeys. So if you've never used Google Maps for bus, it is really brilliant, and it gives you, nice timing information as well. On My Journey, we have various sections, and I mentioned about Hampshire and Portsmouth. So we've got My Journey website for, just move myself out of the way. We've got My Journey website for Southampton, it's My Journey Southampton. We've got My Journey Hampshire, and we've got My Journey Portsmouth, and they look very similar, and usually by default you would go to the most local one.
I think we've completely lost Claire.
Oh,
So
no.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Oh no, she's my technical guru. She knows all about
she is
the
your technical guru, but it will all be fine. I'm just going to put me back on screen again. Give me a moment. So we talked a bit about various bits and pieces in terms of how you plan your journey, and one of the things that I had an experience of a few years ago was I had to go to something at the hospital. And then when I left the hospital, I was left with there's about 17 bus stops around the hospital. It really felt like. So is there an easy way to work out which of the many bus stops in a small area is the right one to get where you're going? Because I certainly felt really quite on edge when I was having that happen.
For me, when I'm in that situation, normally the actual bus stops kind of, well, not always, but sometimes they tell you which buses go from there and you get to. But yeah, I mean, Google Maps is also a really good one. There's a lot of the real-time information signs on bus stops now as well. So again, you can kind of figure it out from there. But yeah, appreciate like when you're on a site with lots more kind of stops and it's a bit more busier, if you're at like a bus hub or something, it can be a bit confusing sometimes.
Yeah, but you would definitely recommend Google as your kind of first port of call in terms of trying to unpick those kind of multiple bus stops.
I think so, yeah. And obviously, I'm sure this is what Claire was going to go into as well, but the operators have their own apps as well, which are really good, that you can plan your journeys, you can buy your tickets on there, they can kind of tell you when your bus is coming as well. Cool. For me, I don't really use them because I just do the tap and cap or the tap on tap off, because I'm lazy and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, while Claire isn't here, do you want to tell us about tap and cap and tap and go, which sounds like something from the Karate Kid?
It does, doesn't it? It's quite confusing as well. So tap and cap is obviously, that's the first bus option. So the cap is you'll never pay more than £3 a day. So your first journey for a single will be £2, and then for any subsequent journeys you make after that, whether it's 2 times, 3 times, however many times you travel that day, it will only ever be capped at £3, which I think if you kind of compare it to what you might be paying for parking or your fuel across the week, I think there is a little bit of a perception of bus travel as being quite expensive, but actually I think when you start making those comparisons, you see it can be a really affordable way to travel. For Blue Star, I don't know as much, and this is where I need Claire, but it's tap on, tap off. So you get on, you tap the card on, and then a lot of the Blue Star buses tend to have the middle door to exit out again, so you don't have to go out the same door by the driver. And there's a reader by that exit where you can then tap off. Do remember to do it, because I got all confused being sort of used to the first busway and I forgot to tap off. So do remember to do it. Otherwise, I think you get charged the maximum fare for to the end of the route, but you can obviously you can sort it out with customer services. But yeah, remember to do that. And Claire's back now, so she can take.
But yeah, and while Claire's getting herself set up, those all work off contactless, don't they? So there's none of the olden days of exact change and all those kinds of things, which always used to, because like you, I believe it, I'm quite a nervous traveller, particularly when it's something I haven't done before, and that I've got to have the 78p or the £1.63, and just tap on, tap off really makes life much easier. I'm not sure we do have Claire back with us. No, we've lost her again. Oh no, it's.
Are you okay? Safe weekend.
honestly, Abbie, I expect you've done a brilliant job of covering for me. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
Where did we get to?
So we started talking a bit about tap on, tap off. I don't really know the fare information for tap on, tap off, so you might need to fill in some gaps there. I know with the tap and cap on a weekly basis, it is capped to, I think, is it £12.50, Claire? Is that right? Or £12?
I think that's fair enough. And the best thing to do is to have a look at the bus operators' own website, because they are both Blue Star and City Red have very excellent websites. So for both of those, there is a £3 a day cap. I know that much. So as long as you do, as Abbie said, remember to tap off, you won't be charged more than £3 a day. And the same with City Red. And there is a weekly cap as well. There's also a lot of multi-trip tickets that you can get. So when I'm traveling regularly, there are times when I travel regularly, commute regularly by bus, I like to use the multi-tickets on my phone. So I actually might buy, I did look this up, I think it's with First, for example, you get a pack of 10 tickets for £15, so that's pretty cheap. And I will use those. However, thinking about that, tap and cap would be exactly the same price. So it's so convenient. I'm sure, because we were talking about this before, I'm sure Abbie has raved about the tap and cap and the tap and tap off. So we both think that's a winning formula, because it's contactless and it's easy. You can use any card as long as you use the same card we go.
Yes, yeah.
That's worth remembering.
Yeah.
We've had a question from. Go on, crack on.
No, there was just one other thing I did definitely want to mention, because bus travel is a really big subject at the moment nationally. And the government has a big campaign to get bus operators and local authorities to work together to improve bus services. So I know in Southampton, and they have something similar in Portsmouth as well, Southampton, we have a bus service improvement plan, which will be published in October. And everybody at the moment has the opportunity to complete a survey where you can have your say about bus services, what you'd like to see improved, think about them. So I think Joe's going to put the link to that survey in the chat. And so if you are interested and have an opinion on bus services in Southampton, please do fill out the survey.
Super. We've had a few questions. This one's from Anna. Are there any tips about keeping safe whilst getting the bus, particularly after dark? And I think especially if you are traveling alone.
Oh, good question.
It is a good question. I think in my experience, I've never really felt uncomfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, the drivers are very experienced, and that is part of their job, to keep the passengers safe. I think that's what I would. I think I probably wouldn't sit at the back on the top on my own, for example, if I was traveling on my own as an empty bus. So stay near the driver, I think would be my tip.
Fabulous. Again, another question, and this is quite an interesting one. Are you able to take bikes on buses, and are there any plans for a change in this in the coming years?
This might be more one for you, Andy.
Rather sadly, I do know the answer to this, but crack on.
No, you know the answer. Go ahead.
So the answer is it varies wildly from bus company to bus company. There are some bus companies, and I can't remember exactly which ones, which will let you take a folding bike on the bus, and that's fine, so long as it's something that will fit into something. In other bus companies, you can take a folding bike as luggage on board, so long as it's in a bag. But a full-size bike, my understanding is you can't take one on a bus at the moment, and there are no plans at the moment for that to change, though I could be proven wrong should our bus strategy, which is obviously, the link is in the chat right now, if that comes up with an overwhelming request for we'd like to take bikes on buses. But yeah, my understanding is
bus design would probably need to fundamentally change, wouldn't it, to allow the space for
absolutely
to do that.
Super. We've had a question from Joe about the £3 limit. Is that just within Southampton City, or is that anywhere within the bus networks that we've talked about?
So both of the bus companies have a map on there, because I think I don't know whether their zones overlap or are the same, but yes, it is primarily the Southampton City area as far as I'm aware. But the best thing to do is to check the bus company's own website, because they will have a map for where that covers.
Fabulous. Earlier on, Abbie, you alluded to the joys of taking multiple small people on the bus.
Yes.
What's your experience of trying to get heavy things like prams or bags or suitcases on and off the bus, and how have you gone about making that easier?
Yeah, really good question. I have a lot of experience in this. I think it's definitely something that gets easier the more you do it. The first sort of few times I got on the bus with a pram was quite daunting. But yeah, you kind of learn where the spaces are. Obviously, you know, the spaces at the front of the bus are reserved for wheelchair users. So I think probably, you know, they should take priority for wheelchair space. But so long as, you know, there's the space there for you to use, you kind of learn to sneak in, and you get in there and just, you know, make sure obviously you're not in people's way, and you're kind of out of the part where people are walking and stuff. Bags, yeah, I used to have lots of sort of funky attachments on the pram that carried all my bags. Yeah, it's definitely something that I think you get better at the more you do it. But yeah, I think also have like consideration for other people as well, particularly, you know, I've been on journeys where there's quite a few people with prams and you're all kind of trying to shove in together. Obviously, you know, you can fold your pram down. When you have like a pushchair and stuff, it's easier to do that. And there are like little spaces where you can store things on the bus, but again, the storage isn't huge, so just be careful. I've seen someone sort of something nearly fall on someone's head once, so just be careful when if you do attempt to do that. But yeah, I think it's about consideration and yeah, careful planning.
And coming back to people who are wheelchair users or have mobility issues, what adaptations do the buses have to make life easier for them? And is there any kind of limit in which spaces or which stops the bus will be able to have level access at? He says, completely putting you on the spot. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that, but I know, so obviously there's space at the front of the bus, which is, as I said, that's allocated for wheelchair use. Then behind that as well, the first sort of few front seats are kind of typically reserved for people with mobility issues or more elderly passengers. So out of consideration, always try and keep those free for people who need them more. The bus has a ramp, so if a wheelchair user needs to get on the bus driver will sort of get out and you know, get the ramp out so that the person can get on and then off again at the end of the journey. The level access thing, I'm not sure. Do you know, Claire?
I think it's possible that there are bus stops that are more challenging than others. But in from what I've seen, I have seen the bus driver, you know, get out of his cab and put the ramp down and, you know, assist somebody with a disability to get on and off the bus with their wheelchair. So I mean, it's part of their job, and they are, you know, really helpful. I think so they would know, and they would also, I think, you know, if anybody has any concerns, the best thing to do is contact bus company in advance, because they would definitely be able to. They both have, you know, both the main bus companies have, you know, customer service departments which can be accessed through the website, so we'd be able to help with that.
One final question. My personal terror when I get on the bus is not knowing where to get off. And this kind of fear that the bus will, I'll kind of go, oh, that's where no, or have no idea and arrive at the end of the line and go, well, I should have got off at some point. How do you take the stress out of that, knowing where to stop?
I'll go first, because I've actually done this abroad. So where I've never been to the city before, nothing looks familiar, and I don't even, you know, speak the language. I have found that Google Maps and, you know, which I said, you can actually access through My Journey or directly, is amazing, because you can watch yourself in the journey. You can actually track your journey, and you can see how close you are to your destination. But in Southampton, of course, we've got buses, and many buses do this. We've got buses that actually tell you what the next stop is. So it tells you verbally, you know, a recorded message, but also it will flash up, the sign will flash up to tell you which is the next bus stop.
Abbie, do you have
And of course,
anything
I
you
come
want
back
to
to
add?
drivers. I'm a great fan of bus drivers, obviously. They will always help.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I think I said this to you the other day, Andy, I remember sort of the previous days where you'd sort of say to the driver, can you let me know when I need to get off? They'd sort of shout to you at the back. But yeah, I think the onboard announcements for me, obviously, you know, if you're commuting by bus and you've done the journey quite a few times, you're going to get to know and you're going to grow in confidence. So, I mean, yeah, I think it comes back to just give it a go and see how you get on. But the onboard announcements are a great addition and very helpful.
Super. That, I think, is a perfect note on which to end. Abbie, thank you very much for your enthusiasm and expertise in terms of taking the stress out of getting on the bus. You've been absolutely brilliant. Claire, thank you also very much for your in-depth knowledge and understanding of the intricacies of bus routing and pricing. It's certainly something I find quite daunting, but feel slightly more relaxed about giving a go for myself now. Everyone who has joined us today, thank you all very much for being here. We do really appreciate your support. If you are watching us on the YouTube video that's been recorded, please like and subscribe to the video. It really helps us in demonstrating to our funders that people are taking part and being engaged with this. If you would like to chat with me afterwards, I can be reached on Twitter at Sustrans Andy. We are all reachable on LinkedIn and are all fairly active there. If you would like to know more about the series, we are at myjourneyhampshire.com/Canny Commuting. So all of the future episodes are there, so you can sign up, and the previous episodes are there as links to the YouTube video. Thank you all very much for coming today. We are back here next week when we are going to be joined by Jenny and Ruth, who are going to talk to us about cycling superpowers, how you can feel more confident in that space on the road. Thank you very much. We will see you next week. Have a lovely week. Goodbye.
Bye.